Hi everyone, this video will teach you how to write the body of your argumentative research essay. Please follow along using the orange What is Argumentative Writing Part 2 booklet. If you don't have one, there's a Word document on Blackboard so you can type your notes directly there. Your argumentative essay should be 4 paragraphs. We have the intro, argument 1, argument 2, and conclusion paragraph. In this video, we're focusing on the body paragraphs, argument 1 and argument 2. I mentioned in a previous video that the thesis statement is the most important statement in the essay, and that's still very true. However, the body paragraphs are absolutely critical because this is where you develop your thesis and prove your thesis. This is really where all the work happens. As always, let's take a moment to think about the following question. What might the reader need in the body of the argumentative research essay? As a writer, it's your responsibility to think about what your reader needs. We know that our reader is uninformed. They do not know much about this topic, so they're going to need some context and background. We know that the reader is intelligent and skeptical. They do not trust you, so you're going to have to earn their trust through a respectful tone, thorough research, rational evidence, and logical analysis of evidence. So here are the 3 rhetorical strategies that we've been talking about throughout the semester: logos or logical appeal, pathos or emotional appeal, and ethos or appeal to credibility. The body of the essay plays a significant role in establishing the logos and ethos of your work. In the body of the essay, you develop your thesis through 2 arguments, 1 paragraph per argument. So in our assignment, you should have 2 body paragraphs. In each body paragraph, your goal is to incorporate reliable evidence through the research you collected through primary and secondary sources, followed by logical analysis of evidence. So as you can see, the reliable evidence component, you're establishing credibility, so it's ethos. And through logical explanation and reasoning of your evidence, you're appealing to the reader's sense of logic, so that's logos. Speaking of logos, it's really important that your body paragraph follows a very specific structure I'm about to teach you, and I call this a double evidence paragraph structure, and I'm in this section of the booklet, so please follow along and label this paragraph. Your body paragraph looks like the following. It opens with a topic sentence. Immediately, you should introduce and state your first reliable evidence. This is followed by analysis of your evidence. Then you transition and introduce your second evidence, which is also then followed by analysis of your second evidence. And finally, you conclude your paragraph with a clear conclusion sentence. As you can see, I call it the double evidence paragraph because you must provide at least 2 distinct evidence pieces to support your argument. We're going to look at each section of this body paragraph so you have a clear idea on how to develop your arguments. Topic sentence, this is not new to us. This is something we talked about before. Topic sentence is the first sentence of your body paragraph where you clearly state the argument. This is important. Your topic sentence should directly refer back to your thesis. If you wrote your thesis correctly and offered your reader with a roadmap of your arguments, then you've already given your reader heads up on what to expect in the body paragraphs. Naturally, your topic sentence then, which encapsulates the argument of this body paragraph, directly refers back to your thesis. My tip to you is that you should be using the same keywords you use in your thesis to mention the argument in the topic sentence of that argument. The topic sentence also makes clear what the specific body paragraph will be about. Everything after this first sentence should be focused on developing the topic sentence. Remember, you're aiming for unified writing. After your topic sentence, you must provide the reader with evidence. Don't dilly-dally here. Immediately jump into your first evidence. And you can offer any of the following: a direct quotation or paraphrase from a research study, a statistical finding, fact, case study, primary source example, opinion of other experts, journalists, industry professionals, and other researchers, or an anecdote. Now, the personal anecdote is not considered the most reliable, so if you use a personal anecdote, make sure the second evidence you provide to complement the first is a rational and credible one to further corroborate your personal experience. I also want to remind you here, please do not forget to cite and give credit to the sources. As ethical researchers who uphold and value academic integrity, it's critical that we give credit where credit is due. Evidence is critical in order to achieve logos and ethos in your essay. Without reliable evidence, you cannot successfully convince an intelligent and skeptical reader to agree with your perspective. They simply would not trust you. It's also important that your sources are current and reliable. Sources published in unreliable blogs or publications that provide brief, superficial, unsupported opinions or overviews of the topic will end up hurting your credibility or ethos in the argumentative essay. In order to build credibility, you must pull evidence from reliable sources published in reputable publications that study the issue in a deep and meaningful way. By incorporating such credible sources, you not only demonstrate your expertise as a researcher, you've clearly done your homework by looking at in-depth sources, but your sources are also other experts, and so the reader is more likely to trust you. Now, a lot of students ask me, how do I select evidence? So I gathered some tips here. Oftentimes, students will provide various examples and quotations or paraphrases, but they're not really sure which ones to use and which ones to leave out. So here are some tips. Select evidence that you have a lot to say about. So something that you can spend time discussing, engaging with, and fleshing out. Select evidence that you can easily make connections with other examples from primary sources or real-world examples. Of course, this is something that you will figure out as you collect research. So as you do research, take note of moments when you can start making connections between sources and examples. Select evidence that you can offer your own unique reading, perspective, and interpretation to. What do you notice here that another expert did not? Share your take on the example. Additional tips include: always aim to paraphrase when you incorporate evidence. Please do not quote unless you really have to. That is to say, you plan to discuss the specifics of the quotation's language, or the writer said it so perfectly that you don't want to alter the original. Paraphrasing is what you should always aim for. It's always a sign of a strong writer. This tells your reader that you've understood the source well enough and confidently enough to say the material in your own words. Another tip: the first time you introduce a source or evidence, please make sure to introduce the writer's first and last name and the title of the source completely. Remember what we mentioned earlier, your reader is uninformed and they didn't do the research in the same way that you did. They didn't read your sources. So if you simply say something like, in Smith's essay, the first time you mention Smith's essay, your reader is going to be confused. Who's Smith? They're going to ask. At the first mention, please make sure you include their first and last name and the title of the source, and then after that, you can refer to them by last name only. I included here some sentence stems to help you introduce your evidence. Sentence stems are sentence starters to prompt you in your writing. They also signal to your reader what you're about to do. So in the sentence stems for signaling evidence, my personal favorite is a simple "for example." This reminds me as a writer to provide an example, and this also signals to the reader that an example is about to be shared. Please feel free to use these and adapt these. Let's move on to analysis. After each evidence, you must follow with an analysis of the evidence. I know that the word analysis sounds very scary, but I'm going to demystify this, and I'm going to give you specific prompts on what you can do to essentially do analysis. First, I want to emphasize what analysis is not. It's not a summary or retelling of your evidence. Students make this mistake very frequently. They assume that the evidence is a quotation and that the analysis is a quotation retold in your own words. And I want to clarify, this is incorrect. Analysis is not a summary or retelling of your evidence in your own words. Now, it's really, really important to note here that this is not what the analysis is, because analysis is where the magic of your essay happens. And this is also where your marks come from. This is where you, as a writer, delve into the evidence to really reason with your reader why they should trust you and agree with you. The analysis, instead of being a retelling of your evidence, it's where you logically explain to your reader how the evidence you selected supports your argument in the topic sentence, and ultimately the thesis sentence in the introduction paragraph. Analysis is where you step-by-step unpack, break down, and explain your reasoning on how your evidence directly or indirectly proves your point. What is it that you see in the evidence? What do you want the reader to see? How does it line back and link back to the topic sentence of your argument and the thesis statement of the introduction? And how do we do all of this? Through a combination of read. Analysis can be done by relating the evidence to other examples, expanding on the significance of the evidence, assessing the credibility of your source, decoding what the evidence reveals, and defending your point again. Evidence cannot explain itself. You, as a writer, must explain it to show how it proves your point. And the way you do this explaining, the way you do this analysis, is through read. Relate, expand, assess, decode, defend. Now, these are familiar to you. Recall that we've been looking at this chart when we were talking about critical analysis. It's the same thing that we've been doing when we carefully read other people's works. So this is something that you should know by this point. This time, I'm simply asking that you use these prompts to analyze, unpack, and logically explain the quotations and paraphrases from the primary and secondary sources in order to get your point across. So to do analysis, right after you provide your evidence, provide some context. Remember, your reader did not do the research. They did not read your sources. So if necessary, you have to provide them with what's going on in the quotation or the paraphrase shared. Where was this particular research done? Who is the speaker here? What is the quotation saying in layperson terms? I included here some sentence stems to provide context for your evidence, and my personal favorite is in this quotation. This reminds you, the writer, to talk about the quote. Students often make the mistake of dropping a quotation moving on. Please do not make this mistake. You have to discuss the quotation, and it starts with providing the context. Please feel free to use and adapt any of these sentence starters. To do analysis, right after you provide context, jump right into unpacking, explaining, and logically breaking down for your reader how your evidence proves your point that you're trying to make in the topic sentence and ultimately in your thesis. Again, if the word analysis is scary to you, remember, do not be alarmed. This unpacking, explaining, and logically breaking down can be done through a combination of read, relate, expand, assess, decode, and defend. Now, I know I use the acronym READ, but I changed the order around to start with what I think is going to be the most common prompt, and I think that's going to be decode. So as soon as you provide context right after that, you can jump into logically explaining your evidence by decoding. Decoding the evidence means to answer the following question. What does your evidence illustrate, reveal, or say about your topic? In other words, what do you want the reader to see in this quotation or paraphrase? Evidence is not self-explanatory. Unless you point it out and explicitly state what your evidence reveals, it will not be clear to your reader. I included here some sentence stems to decode your evidence, and there's a longer list of stems in your orange booklet. Please feel free to use and adapt these. Next, relate. In your analysis, relate the evidence to yourself, other sources, and other real-world examples. How does the evidence you provided connect to other examples? And how do these related examples further reinforce or corroborate your point? I included here some sentence stems to relate your evidence to others, such as a related example is. Please feel free to use and adapt these. You can also do analysis through expanding. This is another important one. Expand on the significance of your evidence. What are the implications of the findings for the community at large? I included here sentence stems to expand your evidence, such as, this finding is significant because ... Of course, feel free to use and adapt these. To do analysis, confirm the point you're trying to make and defend. You will do this often towards the end of the analysis as you try to reinforce your point. How does your evidence highlight, echo, and prove your views? I also included here sentence stems to defend your point, such as, my point is that ... Feel free to use and adapt these. And this final one is something that you're already familiar with because we've been doing this in your annotated bibliography. Assess your source. Why is it trustworthy? How might another intellectual interpret your evidence differently? And how might you respond to them? I included here some sentence stems you can use, such as, X is reliable because ... Please replace X with the source. Feel free to use and adapt these. So in the double evidence paragraph, you'll notice that I asked for two, because it's double, two evidence analysis structures. So after you provide the first evidence, analyze it with a combination of read. Note, you don't have to do all the components of read, simply pick 1 to 3, and then you transition over and segue into your second evidence. Once you provide the second evidence, you must do the same and offer analysis through a combination of read. When you're finished, you should see that all of these, both of these evidence analysis structures all go towards developing your topic sentence because the focus has been consistent. Each of your, both of your analysis sections were focused around explaining how the evidence proves the point you're making in the topic sentence, right? So notice how focused this will force you to be. Please don't forget the transition word here. When you're transitioning to the second evidence, you can find a list of transitional words on our Blackboard page. Please note as well, it's important that the second evidence you select is distinct from the first evidence. Otherwise, your analysis will sound repetitive. Now, some of you may feel like your paragraph after the double evidence analysis structure is too long, very long. And in that case, simply break up the paragraph where the transition happens before the second evidence. I highlighted here with the pink arrows where you can indent, so to signal the start of a new paragraph. So you can cut off your double evidence paragraph into two right where the transition is before you segue into your second evidence. Now with the orange arrows, I also want to highlight there that your topic sentence and your conclusion sentence will be in different paragraphs if you do this, but that's fine. I will know that you are talking about the same argument. Now wrap up with the conclusion sentence. In this double evidence paragraph, the conclusion sentence is a restatement of your topic sentence. You can either copy and paste the topic sentence and tweak it slightly or rewrite it, but make sure you repeat the keywords in your argument. Having a conclusion sentence is important because it neatly ties up a paragraph and ensures that it's focused. I want to remind you of this read the passage organizer, and what I recommend is that when you're doing research, every time you find an important piece of information, whether that's a quotation or a passage, complete one of these read charts, because essentially the notes that you fill in for this chart that I've given you way back early in the semester can become the brainstorming notes for your analysis. And by completing these charts, then you can have a range of different quotations and choose from there which quotation will be best. I posted a student sample on Blackboard. It looks something like this, and each section of this double evidence paragraph is annotated. Please find this on Blackboard in the Week 12 folder and read it on your own and pay close attention to how the student fulfills the double evidence paragraph structure and how they essentially do analysis through a combination of read. As we conclude this video, I want to remind you again of the important question you should be constantly asking yourself as you outline, draft, and revise the body of your essay. What might the reader need in the body of the argumentative research essay? After this video, I hope it's clear to you that your reader, in order to trust you, needs reliable evidence, logical breakdown and analysis of your evidence, and logical structure in order to follow along with your reasoning. Thanks for watching, and please watch the intro and conclusion paragraph videos to learn more about the rest of the essay. Thank you.